There was a joke that people used to tell in South Africa at the time that faced with our unbelievably complex problems, there's two possible solutions: a practical solution and a miraculous solution. The practical solution is that right now we all get out of our chairs and down on our knees and pray for a band of angels to come and solve this for us. The miraculous solution is that we stay in our chairs, talk to one another, and work our problems through together. And in the event, to everybody's surprise, including their own surprise, South Africans chose and implemented the miraculous solution. So the key thing I learned from this experience in South Africa is that it is possible for a highly diverse group of leaders from across a whole social system, even ones who have literally been at war with each other, to co-create a new and better future. You can imagine what an experience this was. I really fell in love with this way of working on tough problems, which I didn't even know existed. I fell in love with the country. It's a wonderful experience to be living in a country at its moment of liberation. I also fell in love with the woman who was the organizer of the project. So by the end of the project, I had resigned from Shell and emigrated from London to South Africa and married the project organizer. Now, I always feel compelled when I'm speaking to young people to emphasize that you can really only do this one or two times. You can't. As I have reflected on what I witnessed in South Africa, I've come to a way of understanding tough problems that has underpinned all of my work since then, and that forms the backbone of what I want to share with you this evening, and which is summarized in this one-page handout that's on your chairs. What I've come to understand is that when we say problems are tough, what this means is that they are complex in one or all of three distinct ways. Problems can be characterized by high dynamic complexity, which means that cause and effect are interdependent and are far apart in space and time. Problems that are characterized by high dynamic complexity cannot be solved piece by piece, budget by budget, department by department. They can only be solved by looking at the problem as a whole. Problems can also be characterized by high social complexity, which means that the actors involved have really different perspectives and interests. The key point about problems of high social complexity is that they cannot be solved by experts or authorities, except by violence. They can only be solved peacefully with the participation of the actors themselves. Finally, problems can be characterized by high generative complexity, which means that the future they're dealing with is fundamentally unfamiliar and undetermined. Problems characterized by high generative complexity cannot be solved by applying best practice, by applying solutions from the past, by asking what did we do last time we had this problem because we never had it before. They can only be solved by growing new solutions, by emergent solutions. So here then is the answer to the question I asked about what does it take for us to be able to solve peacefully our toughest, most complex problems. It takes three distinct capacities, which I believe you will need in the next year, and going on beyond that, and which I believe the public service needs. The capacity to work in a way which is systemic, the capacity to work in a way which is participative, and the capacity to work in a way which is emergent. So I'm going to take these one at a time. First, what does it take for us to be able to solve problems characterized by high dynamic complexity? It takes the capacity to work in a way that's systemic, which means that takes account of interdependencies. I've had an interesting year. I've spent time in Canada and the US, South Africa, Israel, New Zealand, and Australia, and I realized the other day that I have been in all of the countries with big English-speaking settler populations. So I've had the opportunity to reflect on this very particular historical phenomena of the settler mindset. On the one hand, I've been filled with admiration for the capacity to be creative and energetic and entrepreneurial of people who left their homelands to try to create out of what they saw as empty land a new future. And on the other hand, I've been filled with horror at the human and ecological devastation that this settler mindset has produced. I'm starting work in the next few weeks in Australia with a team of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal leaders who are trying to reboot the way their country deals with its Aboriginal reality. You may know that Kevin Rudd recently gave a very important apology to Aboriginal people at the opening of Parliament, which really opened up a new space to deal with this completely stuck issue. And I'm hoping that Stephen Harper's statement on Wednesday will have a similar impact here. In Australia, the historical conflict between the settlers who arrived in 1777 and the indigenous people who arrived 40,000 years before that has been expressed in terms of a doctrine of terra nullius, which is a legal term, a Roman legal term, that means land belonging to no one or empty land. It was only in 1992 that the Australian High Court finally ruled that Australia had in fact never been terra nullius, and that the modern day settlers had to work out a new way of living together with indigenous people. Now, I'm giving you this little bit of history because I think one crucial reality that all of us need to come to terms with is that none of us are living in terra nullius. We can pretend that our world is empty, but it isn't. Our earth is increasingly full of people and buildings and roads and cars and piles of garbage. Our atmosphere is increasingly full of carbon dioxide. Our global society is increasingly full of strong, different, competing ideas and cultures and worldviews. So what does it take for us to be able to solve problems of high dynamic complexity? It takes the capacity to be creative and energetic and entrepreneurial in a way that works for a full world. Second, what does it take for us to be able to solve problems of high social complexity? It takes the capacity to work in a way which is participative. And by here, I mean something far beyond simply consulting or engaging with or negotiating with other stakeholders. It's been really interesting for me over the past 15 years to follow the fortunes of Royal Dutch Shell, which is an organization I have a lot of respect for, in the 15 years since I left to move to South Africa. When I was at Shell, we believed that all we needed to be able to operate in a given country was to be in agreement with the government of that country and in compliance with its laws. But time after time over the last 15 years, the company has found itself in agreement with the government and its laws, but has still been challenged or actually prevented from operating. In the UK around Brent Spar, in Ireland around Corrib, in the US, in Nigeria, in Russia, in Canada, by local and global coalitions of communities, Aboriginal people, and other non-governmental organizations. We're living in a period of an unprecedented explosion all over the world in the number of diverse actors who have voice and who have power.